seen of many dramatic title deciders in the past, and we could have another one yet. This is round 17, the penultimate round of the 2014 FF1M Championship, and I'm being joined by Joseph Willows, potential Constructors Champions if things goes his own way. 30-point lead doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah, fingers crossed we do, and it doesn't sound too bad either. But yeah, looking forward to this. It seems only yesterday that we were at the beginning of the season, and now we're at the penultimate race. It's gone very quick.
Absolutely, time flies when you have fun, and especially...
It does indeed.
Especially as a championship looks like this, with Sebastian Vettel 4 points ahead of Lewis Hamilton now after a very sloppy race at Singapore, which saw no less than 4 incidents, including Jean-Eric Vergne, both Exolites, and one other one which was Jenson Button, and sadly for Exolite, his protest was unsuccessful.
I wonder why it was unsuccessful.
Well, we haven't had a disqualification since the 2000 season, where Ralf Schumacher took both MRDs out at Monza and then his own teammate, and then the last penalty for driving infringements was in 2002, so hasn't happened for a while and doesn't look like it'll be happening anytime soon. There's the Suzuka layout, and last season we saw Romain Grosjean and championship contender for that season, Kimi Raikkonen, have a titanic scrap, and there's a look at the practice timesheets. Looking good so far for Hamilton, although he only did 6 laps, so will that tell itself in the race?
Who knows really. He's on the soft tyres, we've gone for the hard tyres for both of our drivers. What tyres have you gone with yours?
I believe I've gone for the mediums for both drivers in this particular race. I've split the tyres in practice sessions because I'm running the softs for the final race, but for this one, mediums.
Well, hopefully it works out for us. As we said, we could be wrapping up our first Constructors title in only our 3rd season, it would be.
But it's simply Shake and Bake need to score 11 more points than yourself, and seems unlikely, but stranger things have happened in the world of FF1M. So on pole position, and almost as if it's perfectly set for the championship battle, is Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel joining him on the front row. Both your drivers in with a mathematical chance, although quite unlikely, but you never know.
I think we're kind of focusing on the Constructors at this point, to be honest with you. As much as I would love one of our drivers to win it, including Fernando, who will be obviously leaving us at the end of the season, it looks unlikely that we will win the drivers.
And Alonso and Rosberg 9th and 11th, although with Sebastian Vettel in 2nd, 8 points probably won't be enough for Shake and Bake. But Gajira do still have a mathematical chance, but again quite unlikely. And just looking further down the grid, we have got both Horizons on the back row of the grid in their penultimate race. Hopefully they can go out with a bit more of a bang than that.
Hopefully so. They're obviously being replaced by, what's their names, Meister,
a German-run team run by Laura Chung.
Yep. Probably the first female team boss from memory.
First one yet. So, 5 lights go out, and Hamilton away from pole position. Vettel has got a very good start. He's alongside Lewis Hamilton going into the first corner, and it is going to be Vettel who takes the lead of the race from Lewis Hamilton. He's got Kubica, who had a terrific qualifying for Andrew Racing, qualified 4th and now up to 3rd, passing Jenson Button, who's had a bit of a poor start, gone from 3rd to 5th. And then through the S's they go. There's Vettel. He's got Hamilton chasing him immediately, and they're pulling away from Kubica very quickly. So it looks as if it's going to be, if we're going to use a real-life F1 comparison, Schumacher and Hakkinen in 2000.
Very clean start so far from everybody, and no major dramas so far. I've noticed this Sega sponsorship around here. I wonder how much Gajira's paid Suzuka to get them on the track.
At least a tenner, I'd say, as we round the hairpin, and different coloured grass than I'm expecting on the right-hand side, so it's gone through a bit of a makeover, has Suzuka. As we go into the spoon curve for the first time, there is Vettel right in front of Lewis Hamilton, but if it stays like this, then it'd go to the final race.
Yep, and both of my drivers would be mathematically out of it, but as things stand, it looks like we'll be winning the Constructors if it stays like this.
Let's have a double check of that, because Shake and Bake and Magnussen up the inside of Gonzalez going into 130R, and they're side by side under the braking for the chicane, but Gonzalez holds on, and tight chicane. Often see incidents here, but no such trouble so far. Rounding the first lap, Vettel leads. Quick fastest lap being the first lap, but it's Hamilton in second. Third place is Kubica, and Grosjean fourth with Button, Gonzalez, Magnussen, Massa, and here's Bottas having a look at, I believe this is Nico Rosberg into the first corner, and not quite making that one stick. Here's Grosjean versus Kubica.
Yep, battle for third place going on, and that was Rosberg he was challenging, because I saw that Alonso was in 9th position. That was a battle for 11th. I must say, unlike your other two colleagues from last week, I am going to praise Gonzalez, because obviously I do FF2M commentary. He's doing exactly what he did previously, as Grosjean makes a move there on Kubica and gets up into third.
And just further back, Magnussen has just got past Gonzalez for 6th position, so both FJRs in the top 6 at the moment, and here is a replay of this move.
So have a look then. So Magnussen going on the inside of Gonzalez, the FF2M champion, and pretty much easy peasy down at Spoon Curve.
And speaking of FF2M, you did the commentary. We'll have a look at Felipe Massa having a look at Gonzalez into the 130R, and off goes Magnussen, and up goes Massa up into 6th position. That was close.
That nearly ended in tears there. There's a little bit of contact there between Magnussen and Gonzalez. Gonzalez goes straight on the chicane. He's collected both of my guys, Alonso and Rosberg, getting themselves involved in. That's Alonso on the gravel, and Rosberg gaining a few places there, but not good news for Alonso or even Gonzalez.
So once again, Gonzalez getting himself into trouble, as he did in Singapore, and he's having a look at the other Gajera, or the other Gajera's having a look at him going into the first corner. This will be for 20th. And side by side, that's not recommended, but they both play fair.
Yep, indeed. And Gonzalez, unfortunately, getting some bad luck in his FF1M debut. But as you can see, a lot of understeer there from Magnussen, and that kind of caused the chain reaction at that point.
Yeah, a lot of locking up, a bit of contact between Verne and Alonso, and then Gonzalez cuts the chicane, and then there's a Japanese traffic jam, as Bottas is the main beneficiary of that. He moves up into 8th position.
As we now look at Jenson Button, who's now trying to challenge Kubica for 4th position at the moment. So both of your guys currently in the points as we speak.
And it's worth mentioning as well that I'm in a bit of a battle with GRM for 5th position. I've got a 2-point cushion, so it's pretty important for Bottas to be making progress, as he started 12th on the grid. He's now up to 8th, and if something happens to the two FJRs, which reliability's been okay, but Magnussen has had 2 engine failures in the past 2 races, then GRM will be there to pick up the pieces.
GRM obviously have done a very good job, it must be said, mainly from Bottas, of course, who's been picking up most of the points this season.
Yeah, Sainz has only had 1 points finish, and that was his 4th place in Montreal. Meanwhile, speaking of the number 4, it is now lap 4. Vettel leads by 1.5 seconds from Hamilton. Grosjean 3.5 behind. Kubica a further 1.6 behind, but he's got Jenson Button keeping him company. I was just going to say, in the FF2M world, you've been doing the commentary and that. Have there been any standout moments from what you've seen that season?
Well, I think the whole season, to be honest with you, there was so much action in every race really, lots of carnage. Obviously, I think, for me, obviously, Thomas Gonzalez was obviously the driver of the day, hence why the driver of the season, I should say, from obviously dominating the championship, which a lot of people weren't expecting. But, Van Dorn doing a good job for my team, and of course, that's the reason why I've hired him for next season to replace Alonso, and I hope he does a good job.
Absolutely, and with Van Dorn competitive in FF2M, I should expect that he has a decent season next time out. And my choice of driver is the Charles Pic. That was a bit of a strange one, but he's been in FF2M for quite a while, so it might be the right time for him, but who knows.
I wouldn't say that's a strange choice, to be honest, given he finished runner-up in FF2M behind Thomas Gonzalez, so I think that's probably a good choice, to be honest.
Okay, well, let's see what happens as he replaces this driver here, Jenson Button, who is challenging Kubica. Button's actually on the soft tyres, and must have split the tyre choices between Button and Magnussen for Suzuka and Interlagos. So Magnussen will be on softs for Interlagos, and Button will be on mediums.
And Button looks like he's ready to line up Kubica. Will he possibly try and get him into where we've seen a majority of the overtakes being done today, which is down at Spoon? Let's have a look if he can. He's going to the inside, but I don't think he's close enough. No, he isn't.
Not quite close enough, so there's some pace in the Andrew car in front, who had a very good qualifying with 4th for Kubica and 8th for Massa, and they're showing that pace in the race. Into the 130R, is Button close enough to make a move? Up the inside of Kubica, but Kubica has the inside line under braking for the chicane, but Button's going to be a bit later, and he takes 4th position away. So, now we've got Jenson Button behind Vettel, Hamilton and Grosjean, arguably the 3 quick drivers of this season, although some have had more luck than others.
That was a great move from Button, it must be said. Meantime, we've got the 2 tornadoes of Verne and Gonzalez fighting it out for, not really sure what position this is. It's probably down the field, obviously, given what happened to them at the Casio chicane a little bit earlier on.
Now, is this Gonzalez getting ahead of Verne, or is it the other way around? I think it's
Verne. I think it's Verne, isn't it? Because Verne carries a red helmet, so I think that was Verne passing Gonzalez.
And now he's on the back of one of the horizons. It looks like Adrian Sutil as we exit the hairpin. I think it's De Resta, actually, that he's chasing. It's a 19th position, so both tornadoes not suffering good luck. Not having good luck in this race, with both getting involved in the incident at the chicane.
And, their team boss has been very vocal since the last race at Singapore, and the fact that their team has just been suffering quite a lot of bad luck this season as a whole.
I think he's been pretty vocal all season, to be honest. As Gonzalez has a look at Sutil, the other horizon, but not quite managing it into the 130i. Is he going to get a run coming out of the chicane and then going into the first corner? He looks a bit too far back this time around.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get a run to the first corner, to be honest. I think Sutil just got better traction as Vettel will be pitting this lap.
So it's quite early, lap 12, and I must admit I missed the projected strategies, but I'd imagine it'd be 2 stops all around. But if it's quite early, then Vettel may do 3. We'll see what happens as he comes into the pits.
We'll have to see. In fact, he's leaving the fuel quite tight, it must be said, if you look on the bottom left. So he's really pushing the fuel to his extreme.
They do that sometimes. I think the last time I saw that was in Silverstone last season. They were running the fuel quite dry. And that's probably the way they enter the pits.
Yeah, that was the case last season as well, I remember that.
Extreme outside, like there's an invisible white line that they must follow at the left-hand apex. And Hamilton in the pits as well.
So we've got a sort of battle of the mechanics, though I do expect Vettel to still be ahead because he had quite a bit of a gap to Hamilton before the pit stops. So see how quick he is. 5.4 for Vettel and he's on his way, and Hamilton also on his way as well.
And it was about 16, 17 or so laps of fuel, so it's on the edge of whether it's 2 or 3 stops, but we'll see as this race develops, as Hamilton rejoins ahead of Vettel's teammate. That's a crucial one, because Hamilton would not have wanted to be stuck behind Daniel Ricciardo.
Rosberg's just coming to the pits for my guys. I noticed as well that Hamilton was 5 attempts quicker in that pit stop compared to the shake and bake guy, so might have gained a little bit during that pit stop.
Good pit work from the Gajeras. Now we've got Vettel stuck behind Kevin Magnussen. Needs to clear him pretty quickly if he's going to pull away from his championship rival.
He's only just there, isn't he, in the background?
And it's not a recommended move going around the outside into the hairpin, unless your name is Kamui Kobayashi.
Or if you're going to fail to do that attempt, it's Sergio Perez. So
up the inside into the spoon curve, and that's a position gain for Sebastian Vettel. Now, his next target's Robert Kubica, and only a couple of seconds up the road, so depending on what Kubica does for his strategy, then as Grosjean comes into the pits from the lead, hasn't had a good run of luck, looked very good for challenging the championship, but suffered a pretty bad reliability run.
Oh dear, what have your guys done?
Oh, we're double stacking. That's not recommended.
Do you remember Malaysia with my guys, as Magnussen's got a problem?
It looks as if he does indeed, so this must have been immediately after his pit stop because his fuel has been topped up. So that was a comedy of errors for my team.
Looks like you'll be having to sack one of your guys like I did in Malaysia.
And it's a gearbox problem for Kevin Magnussen. And back to the action. Jean-Eric Vergne versus an Exolite. Let's have a look at what tyres the Exolite's on. They're still on the hards.
Yep, as the Tornadoes are on the, I believe these are the medium tyres, aren't they? Because I believe the soft tyres are red, aren't they?
Yes, the yellow banded medium tyres. As up the inside into the 130 yard goes Vergne. That's 15th position. So, how far can he get up the order, or will his car even last? Because Verne's car broke down on the last lap at Monza, and he got punted off by Vettel on the first lap at Singapore, as Suttle has retired with a mechanical drama.
Pulled off at exactly the same place where Magnussen pulled off, I think. Oh no, that's a little bit further back on the track. That looks like the hairpin he's pulled off.
Yes, the middle of the hairpin, and Magnussen pulled off at just before the spoon curve. And just looking at, and we've seen Rosberg is up to 7th position, so 2 points for Willows so far, and 12 for Shake and Bake. It would be 20 points if it stayed like this, the gap. And I'm just trying to work that out. Would that mean you'd be crowned champions? Possibly.
Depends if we've got more wins than Shake and Bake.
I believe so. Alonso has had 3, Rosberg's had 1, and Shake and Bake have had 3. But then Shake and Bake would have 4.
Then it would have to come down to second place then, wouldn't it? It would have to come down to who's got the number of second places. Oh, Jesus Christ, Bottas.
Bottas getting a bit aggressive on Nico Rosberg into the chicane, and through to start another lap. Back to Jean-Eric Vergne, who's now challenging Kamui Kobayashi, the home hero.
Yeah, indeed. I'm just going to check really to see how many second place both teams have, just to ensure if that's going to be enough to win it or not. So I'll keep you posted.
As Jean-Eric Vergne doesn't quite get past Kamui Kobayashi into the 130R, so he's going to have to wait until at least the start-finish straight before making a move. And Kobayashi, this is his penultimate race because he doesn't have a drive for next season, but there will still be a Japanese driver on the grid, as Itsuki Yoshida will be making the move up from FF2M to FF1M, partnering Sebastian Vettel in the Shake and Bake, and bringing Samantha King's sponsorship with him. So through the S's,
yeah,
there's Sorry, go ahead.
Continue. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, it was a bit of an interesting one for Shake and Bake to put Itsuki Yoshida there, given he had quite a bit of a shaky season in FF2M, so be interesting to see if it works out well for him in quicker machinery, a bit like Kamui Kobayashi was able to make it work in real life.
That's a fair point, that. Yoshida had 2 wins in FF2M, the first race, and then the sprint race at Monaco, and I would arguably say that Cooper Lee had a very shaky season, very inconsistent, but he's going to be in FF1M with Mitchell.
Although I will say, to Lee's credit, I do feel he showed a lot more potential than what Yoshida did. I'm not saying Yoshida's a better driver, I just see a little bit more potential in the Australian than what I did with Yoshida, to be honest.
I do agree with that.
Anyway, back to the action.
So Verne's still behind Kobayashi, but firmly in the slipstream as they approach the 130R. There is an X-Light in front of these, but that's none of their concern, because up the inside now, and Kobayashi hanging on round the outside, and he's up the inside, he's holding on to the position. So, it's the X-Light, I think it's Perez, from Kobayashi, Vergne, and then the other X-Light, which must be Kimi Raikkonen. Perez did start 3 places ahead of Raikkonen on the grid, so I would expect it to be that order.
Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to wait and see, of course, as the season progresses. I did have a look at the championship standings just a little bit earlier on. I think we would win it because we've had 5 second places and Shake and Bake...
Hold that thought, because we've got Rosberg pulled off the track.
Oh, damn it.
And that's not going to help his... That's pretty much him out of the championship now for the drivers. And it's a gearbox problem.
Another one for this race, but a shame really. And I would think if it stood like this, then Shake and Bake would keep their slim chances alive.
With 12 points for Vettel, and at the moment no points for Willows, it would be down to 18 points. And there's a battle going on between Kobayashi and Vergne. And first place is worth 12 points, second place worth 8 points. And with 20 on offer per race, or 20 point potential swing, then Shake and Bake would still be in it just. But there's still more than half the race to go, as once again Vergne having a look at Kobayashi. Kobayashi gives him space, and once again Kobayashi hangs on.
Indeed so, as they make their way through into the chicane there. And out of the corner they go. He's not close enough this time, but I've noticed quite a lot that the drivers don't seem to be very close coming out of that chicane, so it really is about traction coming out of there.
Yeah, they do seem to be struggling for traction coming out of the chicane, and So it seems as if the best places to overtake are going into the spoon curve and then into the 130R. So very difficult to overtake round here. It's worth pointing out Ricciardo is actually in 8th position, so that'll be an extra point for Shake and Bake if it stays like this.
Which would be great for them indeed, as they'd be able to be 17 points behind us if that remained like that, with Ricciardo in 8th, as Vern still can't find a way past Kobayashi at this point. But yeah, as you mentioned, Kobayashi not being on the grid next season, to be honest, I'm not really surprised, to be honest, and I know that sounds a bit harsh, but I'm not really surprised given that he hasn't really done the job for Gajera this season, it must be said. Then again, you could say the same about Daniel Ricciardo. You
could do, and I mean, both Ricciardo and Kobayashi do have very tough teammates in the form of Vettel and Hamilton, and both have had podiums. Kobayashi's had a 2nd and a 3rd, so he's not done terribly, but Hamilton is in the chance of the Drivers' Championship, Kobayashi isn't. So yeah, I do see why Kobayashi's not on the grid, although it is a bit of a shame.
Yeah, at the same time, though, the consistency wasn't there, though, for Kobayashi, which you could argue has prevented Shake and Bake from challenging us properly in the Teams Championship. Although they'll still mathematically be in it, as we speak. In fact, I'm talking about Gajera, really, aren't I? Well, same can be said for Shake and Bake as well, in a way, because although they will have a mathematical chance if it stays like this, they haven't really properly mounted an attack, mainly because Ricciardo's basically been in no man's land.
Although Shake and Bake have been much more competitive since Spa, as Vettel does his weird pit entrance, as they do seem to do here. For his 2nd stop, it does look as if it's a 3-stop strategy.
We'll have to see how much fuel he'll pull in, though, just to make sure, but I do think it's also a free stop. But let's see as he pulls into his box, as there's more mechanics coming out. I think they're Mitchell mechanics that's coming out. Let's see how quick the stop will be this time. A lot longer than it was last time, and it's a 6.3 second stop. Very weird, considering he's only put 15 laps worth of fuel, so maybe some delays going on at Shake and Bake.
And Hamilton carrying on for another lap as Jenson Button comes into the pits from 4th position, so he's having a solid race. And important for FJR to have at least one car in the race and ahead of the GRM if they're going to be 5th in the championship. And this is Hamilton in the pits, and more pit stops in force.
And he's also put in 15 laps worth of fuel, but that was a much quicker stop than Vettel's, 5.3 there, so just over a second quicker than Vettel's pit stop, but still slower than his previous stop, which I find very interesting.
So if he's putting 15 laps on, then I think Vettel will be in first and then Hamilton 1 lap later for the final round of pit stops. And Grosjean's not too far behind. I think he gained quite a bit in that pit stop, but on the fresher tyres I would expect Hamilton to pull away a little bit, as Vern up the inside of the Exolite into the 130R and muscles his way up into 12th position.
Another great move there from John Vern, making a comeback after what happened to him at the Casio chicane. He's actually got a bit of a train behind him as well, but I think he'll get away from that train as soon as he puts his foot down, of course, as we look at Hulkenberg, who is under pressure from the Pedersen of, I'm not quite sure which Pedersen that is. I don't think, as Hulkenberg pulls off.
It was Chandok who was following Hulkenberg, but Hulkenberg has pulled off with a mechanical issue. Let's see what comes up on the screen. You can see his wheel turning. Could be a suspension, but it could be a gearbox problem. As the marshal pushes the Mitchell out of the way, it's a gearbox problem for the unfortunate Hulkenberg.
The gearbox is really taking a strain around here in Suzuka. It must be said that's the 3rd one we've seen, as we've got a suspension failure now for Kimi Raikkonen. Look at the rear right.
I can see that indeed. That's quite a major suspension problem for the Exolite driver, and their miserable season continues, unfortunately.
And Kimi's miserable defence to his title, which as a result, obviously now we know that he's not going to be defending the title, of course. Just been a miserable season for the Flying Finn.
He's only had 2 points finishes as well. He's had a 3rd in Sepang and a 5th in China, and that's been it. And he's been outscored by Perez as well.
Meantime, Kobayashi looks like he's on a charge. He's on the back of the other Exolite, which is of course Perez.
And there's Willows behind, which is Alonso. So these two are going to be battling, I think this is for 13th position as we go through 130R. It's for 12th position because Hulkenberg has moved these two up a position and Kobayashi takes it at the chicane. Good move.
Now that is the pure definition of a diver. There was a bit of contact there between Alonso and Perez. Perez taking quite an awkward line off the exit, but it's now going to give Alonso a perfect opportunity to get him into the first corner. Alongside he goes, and both of them have the Olmo engine, but clearly Alonso has it dialed up better, and he's up into 13th position.
That was straight line speed, that, from the Willows. And here's Romain Grosjean. He's due in the pits this lap for his third stop. He can see Hamilton in front of him. Now, Romain Grosjean could do Sebastian Vettel a bit of a favour if he gets a good pit stop in and uses new tyres to advantage. He could be challenging Hamilton for second position.
Absolutely. He's probably got himself in this battle for second. In fact, where is Vettel? In fact, he's kind of cleared off, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's disappeared. This is a virtuoso performance from Vettel. One that we haven't seen since Estoril when he last won a race.
He's clearly made his free stop strategy work better than Hamilton's free stop strategy.
So through the chicane comes Grosjean.
And into the pits he got Vettel's in as well.
So Vettel seemingly responding to the Pedersen pit stop by getting Vettel in early and make use of these fresh tyres. And Vettel being delayed a little bit, but he had a big enough lead over Hamilton that it probably shouldn't affect him too much.
I wouldn't expect it to be, and obviously we didn't see the time there for Vettel, but he's obviously lost a bit because of Grosjean. 4.7 seconds, a very quick stop from the Pedersen mechanics.
As Jenson Button comes into the pits from what is now a lonely fourth position. Ever since he overtook Kubica for that fourth position, he's just been quietly getting on with it.
As now we look at Hamilton, who's going to be coming into the pits this time by, and it will of course be his final stop of the race because he's already done 2 stops, so this will be his third and final stop of the race.
Rounding the spoon curve goes Lewis Hamilton, so after his final pit stop he's hoping that having at least 1 lap younger tyres is going to give him a chance to challenge for the race win, which would be his 5th at the Suzuka circuit. And Vettel has had 1 win at the Suzuka circuit. That was back in 2007 when we had 2 races in Japan, 1 at Suzuka and 1 at Fuji. As into the pits comes Hamilton.
Interesting indeed. Well, speaking of 2 races at the same country, we'll obviously be racing at Italy twice next season, I believe, as well.
Because we've got Mugello on the calendar for the San Marino Grand Prix. That one I am looking forward to.
Should be interesting to see how that one happens, as De Rest is now out of the race, so that's both horizons out.
So that's bad luck for the team that will be competing in their final race next time out, and Gonzalez out of the race as well with a gearbox problem of his own.
So it's not really been the best of debuts for the FF1M champion, but I do expect big things from him hopefully in Brazil, and obviously next season as well, because he will be at Tornado next season as well, so looking forward to it. He'll obviously be partnered with Fernando Alonso, who'll be returning to the team.
Absolutely. And up the inside is this Kobayashi versus Sainz for what must be somewhere about 10th position. This is 11th between Kobayashi and Sainz, and up the inside this is Works Mugen versus Customer Mugen.
Yep, and it looks like the GRM just about getting the edge going out of 130R, so Sainz will just be able to stay on Wooly, because Kobayashi's actually going to try and do the unthinkable here, and he actually has pulled it off.
Well done, Kobayashi. I wish you were still on the grid next season, but anyway, and he'll probably be racing in the FGT3 Championship, which is an outlet for the unemployed FF1M drivers. Sainz having to go back into turn 1, but Kobayashi braving it out round the outside.
Bit like the old Formula E Championship we had.
Yes, which took a while to resolve, and that's Felipe Massa out of the race. That's unfortunate.
That is a fiery engine.
Confirmed as an oil leak, but somewhere in the engine has gone a bit wrong. So that's not good for the Megatron user.
Clearly one of the pins may have come loose in that engine there, but it has lifted Chanduk now into the points.
As poor old Massa, who will be driving for Meister next season alongside Kimi Raikkonen, has craned away.
So, yeah, a pretty good choice from the new team boss there to get 2 experienced drivers in the team. So, hopefully, some big things coming from the German team, as Alonso's going to try and do the impossible on Sainz, but he didn't quite make that one work out. And he doesn't seem to have the traction this time by, so Sainz is just going to stay in front for this lap in particular.
Spaniard versus Spaniard for 12th position, it's probably for 11th place actually because of Massa's retirement, and we have 10 laps to go. And here he goes again, up the inside of 130R. Is he going to manage it this time? And yes, he does, quite convincingly. And up to, I've forgotten what position, but I think it's 11th.
Might be 12th, because I think Kobayashi and Sainz were fighting for 11th position, but still, the Ilmor engine proving to be very powerful.
And here is Sebastian Vettel. He's got 5-second lead over Lewis Hamilton, so the 1 lap younger tyres, not enough it seems. As he's approaching, I think he is approaching Sainz to lap him.
That looks like Bottas, I think, because it looks like blue on the top of the helmet. And it is Bottas.
Well, Bottas is 7th. He's 57 seconds behind Vettel, so I think it is Sainz.
Bit strange then, really, isn't it? Because it looks blue, the helmet does, from where I'm sitting anyway. But it might be Sainz.
So with 3 laps to go, Vettel starts his 3rd to last lap. Hamilton 4.5 seconds behind, so he took half a second out of the shake and bake driver. So one final push to try and get ahead of the shake and bake driver. If it stays like this, Vettel will be 8 points ahead of Hamilton. But if Hamilton can get ahead and Vettel finishes 2nd, they'll be equal going into the final race at Interlagos. If something extremely dramatic happens to Vettel on the last 3 laps, meaning that he doesn't finish, then Hamilton would win and hold an 8-point lead over Vettel. So the inside of Sainz or Bottas, depending on which GRM is in that particular car, and no such problems for Vettel.
As he makes his way through the corner, and 3 laps to go, and he looks like he's pretty much in control, even if Hamilton's just chipping away a bit at his lead.
And no such battles within the top 8, because Grosjean is 10 seconds behind Vettel, 10.5 to be exact. Button is 32.5 seconds behind Vettel, and Kubica 51.4, Ricciardo 55, Bottas 57.4, and then Karun Chandhok is in 8th position, some 1 minute and 5 seconds behind race leader Vettel as he starts his penultimate lap.
Just looking at the Constructors' battle, because Ricciardo's actually up into 6th position, so I think if it stays like this, they'll half the gap, so they'll actually be 15 points behind us going into the finale.
Reduced from 30 to 15, with Vettel 1st and Ricciardo 6th, and Gajera would be out of it, because they were around 33 points behind Willows, so they needed much more of a miracle than that. And with Hamilton 2nd and Kobayashi not in the points, that's not enough for Gajera.
Gap now down to 4.1 seconds, but as I said on the previous lap, I think Vettel's pretty much just controlling the pace at this point. But I will say, knock on wood, hopefully he doesn't have a Jenson Button moment in Canada and he pulls off on the final lap. But the fact that we've cut to the footage on lap 49, you never know.
Yeah, it doesn't fill with much confidence that it's switched to him this early. And just on the actual season itself, for the most part, Vettel and the Shake and Bake haven't been the fastest car, but they have been one of the most reliable. And with Hamilton and Grosjean suffering reliability issues in the second half, why is Kubica going? Kubica has had an issue and is dropping down behind Ricciardo. There he is! That is sad. He had such a good performance the whole weekend and it's all gone to naught.
Make that now 14 points between ourselves and Shake and Bake, because Ricciardo's now gone up to 5th as a result of Kubica's retirement.
And who's moved up into 8th position, I wonder? And it's Verne, so he's managed to fight back, and up to 8th position. There's Alonso, I think, in 9th.
Just 1 place away from the points, but even so it won't be enough to wrap up the title as Vettel is on the final lap of the race.
And Hamilton actually lost a couple of tenths on that lap to Vettel as he rounds the S's. And just on the reliability front, Vettel has had a very reliable car, and as have the 2 Willows, because since Silverstone you've been classified in every race up until Rosberg's transmission problem.
Yeah, I mean, we've still got a little bit of waviness when it comes to consistency, but it seems compared to the 2012, which was the last time we had a competitive car, it seems that we've seemed to be a little bit more reliable, but we still have a little bit of some niggling issues here and there.
a little bit of a speed issue in this particular race, it seems, but can you remember what tyres you've chosen for Interlagos?
Not from memory, no. I'll probably need a reminding when I check the spreadsheet next time by.
And I've no idea what tyres Shake and Bake have chosen for Interlagos, but I would expect them to be a little bit softer. And rounding the final chicane now, it's been an absolutely virtuoso performance, exactly when he needed it because of Hamilton's faster Gojira. Sebastian Vettel wins the Japanese Grand Prix and thus extends his lead over Lewis Hamilton to 8 points. And we'll wait confirmation of Hamilton's second place in this race as Vettel takes the plaudits from the marshals.
Indeed, a great result from Vettel, just controlled it really and just didn't look like he was going to be touched.
And Hamilton does indeed finish second with Grosjean in third. Jenson Button takes fourth with Daniel Ricciardo fifth for Shake and Bake. So that would indeed put Shake and Bake now 14 points behind Willows. So the championship battle still carries on. Bottas takes sixth for GRM, but they lose a couple of points to FJR in the Constructors Championship with Button up in fourth. And completing the top 8 are Karim Chandok and Jean-Eric Verne.
Yep, Alonso just missing out on the points indeed, but both championships are going down to the wire in Brazil, so hopefully we'll be in for a fascinating finale, even if both Hamilton and Shake and Bake will need a little bit of luck to try and win those 2 championships respectively.
And both Alonso was actually had the 7th fastest lap in that race. I do believe he was caught up very badly at the chicane, so I think there is still pace left over in the Willows, so it should still be exciting though, with Shake and Bake truly competitive. And there's the list of the retirements. Key ones are Magnussen, lost a point scoring opportunity, and then Gonzalez, not a good day for Climax, 3 out of 4 not finishing.
Now we're going to take a look at the championships then, after the Japanese Grand Prix.
8 points between Vettel and Hamilton. Grosjean sits third, but there is a 3-way championship battle for third now between himself and the 2 Willows. Alonso fourth, Rosberg fifth. Those 3 only separated by the 3 points. Bottas holds a very comfortable 6th. I'd expect him to stay there come the end. And Jenson Button guaranteed top 7 in the championship. And you can see the lesser positions, Ricciardo 11th. And there is the Constructors' Championship situation. Willows 14 points ahead of Shake and Bake, and officially now Gojira out of it.
Yep, so it's just a 2-horse race between myself and Courtney Cass.
Works Ilmore versus Works Megatron in the engines of those 2. And just further back, and we can see FJR now 4 points ahead of GRM. But that's not decided just yet. So, we move on to the final race. Who will be champion? Vettel or Hamilton? Willows or Shake and Bake? From the 2 of us, we shall see you then.
Sayonara.